Chris Grier's vision for the Miami Dolphins going forward looks to be revealed after the offseason that he has had to this point. Miami has done a lot of good things in the draft as well as in free agency. They're making the roster more youthful, and it's absolutely glorious because last season, the Dolphins' 2024 roster was the oldest roster in the NFL with an average age of 27.3. And we saw the negative side effects of that last season. A lot of injuries, a lot of players in the secondary who the age caught up with them. Jordan Poyer was not good in coverage. Kendall Fuller battled injuries quite a bit. You just saw it across the field that the age of the Dolphins roster caught up to them, and they needed to get younger, more athletic this offseason, and I believe Chris Grier has done a good job of that. We're going to detail it and look at the Dolphins draft class a little bit more in depth today. But I tell you what, folks, the goal is Miami back in the playoffs next year. They've been in the postseason 2 of the 3 seasons under Mike McDaniel. I want to be back in 2025. Spam me down in the comments section. I'll tell you what, I get a list of people who watch the video and don't comment. And if the Dolphins miss the playoffs, don't be on that list. Spam the me's down below. All right, let's talk more about the Dolphins roster here because I tell you what, it's been easy on the eyes to look down that roster list and see the youthfulness and the change in direction. Do I think the roster on paper this year is better than last year's? I actually don't. If you remember, I was very high on the roster coming in to last year. I thought due to their schedule and their experience, they were going to be able to really compete for that AFC East crown. Now, evidently, that wasn't going to be the case, but I do believe if Tua played 17 games rather than 11, the team probably wins 10 games is in the NFL playoffs. But that's a if and but type of conversation to be had. But when you talk about the Dolphins draft class, where they selected 8 players, it is the youngest draft class in the NFL by a pretty wide margin. You see it there. 21.5 years of age is the average. The oldest draft class was Denver. That was at 23.14 average age. So that is basically 2 years younger in their average player drafted. So clearly Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel and the rest of this front office identified players that they believe they can develop and make long-term staples of this Dolphins organization rather than instant impact guys. Or maybe they believe that the youth and impact don't go separate. They actually go hand in hand. And how about this stat as well? We showed you how young this draft class on average was for the Miami Dolphins. It was actually the youngest draft class in the last 5 drafts. So you go 2025, 2024, 23, 22, 21, 20, whole 9 yards by 8 months. That is a ridiculous margin. That means the last most youngest draft was 22 years of age on average, while this draft class is 21.5. It's unbelievable. And you look at some of those players that Miami ultimately drafted. I mean, their first 2 picks, Kenneth Grant and Jonas Savaiinaia, 21.4 years of age, 21.2 years of age. The youngest player they drafted was defensive lineman Jordan Phillips in the 5th round. He's average 20.9. And you look at some of the other players that Miami drafted. Zeke Biggers, 21.5 years of age. Ollie Gordon, 21.2. You got some older players sprinkled in there. Jason Marshall Jr., Dante Trader Jr. But for the most part, pretty young draft class. And we talked about it. The average age of this Dolphins draft class, 21.5, 21.6. So this is something that Miami has been trying to do more and more of. They started doing it last year in the 1st round pick when they took Chop Robinson out of Penn State, who is still 22 years old, very, very young. And now they do the same thing again here with Kenneth Grant, Savaiinaia, Jordan Phillips. Their first 3 picks, super young, an average age of just about 21 years of age. And they are hopefully going to be in this organization, if they pan out, for 7+ years and playing at a high level due to their youthfulness. I love what I'm seeing from Chris Grier in the trenches as well as moving younger on the roster. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. This is a family here at Dolphins Today, and we have nonstop coverage every single day of the Miami Dolphins. And when the season and football rolls around in the fall, boy, is it a lot of fun to hang out with y'all on a weekly basis and during our watch parties. Hit that sub button, turn on notifications. never miss a piece of content we put out over the offseason. But I also think it's important to look at what the Dolphins did in free agency. It's not just the draft where they tried to get younger. They obviously targeted a select amount of players in free agency due to their limited cap space, but also wanting to move younger. Because out of the 8 most impactful free agent signings that I believe are going to happen, James Daniels, Iafatu Melifonwu, Ashton Davis, Larry Borum, Nick Westbrook-Akini, backup linebackers Willie Gay and KJ Brett. Like, the oldest player they signed in free agency is 28 years old. And I believe, just looking through it all, that is the oldest player they signed. They didn't sign anyone over the age of 30 so far in free agency. That might change when they obviously and inevitably sign a cornerback, because the only corners still available outside of Asante Samuel Jr. are pretty much all in the 30s. But it's clear. You look at the draft, you look at free agency. Chris Grier wanted to add youth into this roster. I mean, it is just going to be something we continue to talk about this offseason. And I think it might help the Dolphins stay healthier. Like, no offense, but it's obvious. You play more in the league. You're an older player. Your body starts to break down a little bit more. More injuries pile up. When you're younger, you're able to bounce back from injuries quicker. You don't have them as much. Your body can bend and contort in different ways, and they bounce back from it. So getting younger, getting faster, more athletic will also help the Dolphins hopefully stave off the injury bug that has plagued them over the past 2 or 3 seasons, and maybe they can stay healthy and make a run deep into the year. There's added benefits to going youthful rather than just being more athletic. We're going to wrap up the conversation here on today's show in just a second, but make sure you get your Dolphins jerseys today at chatsports.com/Dolphins jersey. You can get rookie Kenneth Grant's jersey, Jonah Savignaya, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Phillips. They got every size, every player, every color, every style that you can think of. The links in the description and comments of today's video. One more time, chatsports.com/Dolphins jersey. That's the link. Go grab yours today. But we talked about the free agency class. We talked about the draft class. How about the building blocks already in store for the Miami Dolphins? I mean, you look at some of the most impactful players on this team. Honorable mention to Tua Tagovailoa, your quarterback, if he ultimately is your QB1 of the future. He's still only 27 years old. But your wide receiver 1, Jalen Waddle, 26 years old. Your leading edge rusher, Chop Robinson, still 22 years old, entering his second season. You have to make a decision on Jalen Phillips, but if you ultimately extend the former first-round pick, your top 2 edge rushers, 22 and 25. Your offensive tackles at left tackle and right tackle, Patrick Paul and Austin Jackson, 25 and 23. You have Devon Achane entering year 3 at age 23, and you have Jalen Wright entering year 2 at age 22. So you have a lot of weapons on the offense, on the defensive line, offensive line, all under the age of 25. Like, that is impressive stuff that you hope just continues to mount up to give you experience, a culture in this organization. There's 2 clear goals this offseason. Get younger and faster on defense, but also build and invest into the trenches. And I believe both were achieved to a degree. Do I think we can go and say that the Dolphins' offensive line and defensive line were improved in such a drastic way where they are now top 10 in the league in both sides? No, I'm not going to go that far. But they clearly have invested, right? You added Kenneth Grant, Zeke Biggers, and Jordan Phillips in the draft. You added 3 interior defensive linemen to pair up with Zach Sealer on the interior. You brought back Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, Mohamed Kamara. You signed James Daniels on the offensive line, 3-year, $24 million deal. You drafted Jonah Savignaya, the offensive lineman that can play 4 different spots, left tackle, right guard, in the second round. So you addressed the offensive line with free agency in the draft. You went big-time draft mode in the defensive line. You're getting younger. You're getting more physical. You're investing into the trenches, and I can't get enough of it. Be honest with me, folks. Do you like what Miami has done this offseason? I know a lot of people are a little disappointed with no major splash, if you will, in free agency, but I think they have done what they've needed to do to build a better infrastructure to this roster. So I'm typing my Y's, but let me know your thoughts. Yes, type Y. No, type N. Let's round out the show with this because I did want to share this. Some Dolphins rookies have already started to sign contracts. On Thursday, May 8th, the Dolphins agreed to terms with quarterback Quinn Ewers on a 4-year deal, 7th-round pick. He will be that QB3 behind Tua, Zach Wilson, that developmental third quarterback. Reason why I'm displaying this is that it's nice to see some rookies sign. You take it back just 1 year ago today, due to Miami not having like any cap space, they signed like none of their rookies until June. So the fact that it's already early May, mid-May, and we're seeing some of these rookies sign to the Dolphins roster, it just makes you feel good about things that you didn't have to wait. We saw the Dolphins make some roster moves to get underneath the 90-player offseason roster threshold on Thursday. So looks like this organization is much more, say, organized in this offseason than they were a little bit last year. And I still expect some signings to be had in the secondary as well. And when those signings ultimately happen, we will have you covered with videos. So make sure you hit that sub button and join us here at Dolphins Today. Like I said, it's a family, and we put out content every single day.